Welcome back to the Startup Showdown podcast, where we discuss pitching, funding, and scaling startups. Join us as we interview winners, mentors, and judges of the monthly $120,000 pitch competition powered by Panoramic Ventures. We also discuss the latest updates in software, Web3, healthcare tech, fintech, and more. Now sit tight as we interview this week's guest and their journey through entrepreneurship.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Startup Showdown, and this is going to be a fun one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, Panoramic Ventures. Without them, we couldn't be sharing these important stories. Today on Startup Showdown, we have Jason Burchard with RootNote. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Lee, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us a little bit about RootNote. How are you serving folks?
Yeah, so we're building a business intelligence product for digital creators. There are over 640 million people in the world with over 1,000 followers, or what you would consider to be nano influencers. And we live in this crazy world today where literally anybody can build a brand around digital content. One of the things that we've kind of recognized over the past few years is that these creative businesses, they basically operate at the intersection of creativity, which is obviously paramount to the business, and then data. And as you can imagine, the vast majority of creators who are building brands around their content, they're not data scientists, they're not data analysts, but they have to use it in their day-to-day business. So we're building a SaaS product that makes data analytics and intelligence accessible to literally anyone, and helps digital creators make better decisions using data.
Now, historically, people have been talking about data, big data. This conversation has been going on for a long, long time in that regard. But when you kind of add on the creator piece, and that creator is, and I'm sure you've cast a wide net on who a creator is, right? That could be a musician, that could be an artist, that could be a blogger. Like that term fits a lot of folks. How do you help them not only just capture the data, but make kind of actionable decisions based on the data? Because the data has always been there. It's just a matter of how do you find what's important and kind of ignore what's not important and not get distracted by things that seem important but probably aren't important.
That's a great point, Lee. It's one of the challenges that we're kind of faced with in 2022 is that there is a ton of data that's available. Huge corporations have been facing this forever. And the reality is that anyone who's trying to build a business around their content, plus e-commerce and everything else, they have to be paying attention to social media numbers, engagement across multiple platforms. If you are a podcaster, you're creating music, you've got to be paying attention to who's listening to you on Spotify or Apple or Pandora, all of the different content streaming sites. If you're a live streamer, you're looking at what your average watch time and view time is on Twitch. There are all of these very complex analytics that factor into the business that ultimately you need to understand when kind of looking at, what's actually driving revenue. Wherever we're looking at somebody's Shopify, their e-commerce platform, or their MailChimp email list, really understanding kind of what those core metrics are. And you really hit the nail on the head there. The question is, how do you actually make all of this data actionable? And one of the things that we realized early on is because data is all over the place, it's really, really hard to even understand where to begin. So the first step in what we're first kind of solving is just that challenge of getting all of this data into one place, just like any other company or business would need. And the second part of that is making data actionable. And one of the first things that we're doing there is we're helping creators build out their suite of products and services, or what we're calling their creator stack. As you can imagine, there is so much information out there about different products and platforms and services. And anyone running a small to medium-sized business can tell you how overwhelming that process can be. So the first thing that we're doing is using data and generating basically the ability and kind of telling people what other platforms and products and services that they can look towards that will help them. From there, we're diving deeper into engagement, analytics, benchmarking. One of the fundamental questions that we want to enable every user to be able to answer is just simply, is this working? And I challenge you to ask the vast majority of creators if they can tell you whether or not a particular strategy is or isn't working without really diving into that data. So that's, moving beyond just kind of the stack building. We're getting into more of the kind of prescriptive and predictive analytics when it comes to forecasting future earnings and understanding what some of those kind of key revenue drivers are. And eventually, obviously, we'll be going full circle and bringing in cost data as well, so that we can start looking at ROI on various marketing campaigns and initiatives. But it all starts at one place, and that's getting the information into a centralized location.
So how did this problem get on your radar to solve? Like, what's your backstory? How did this subject matter become of interest for you?
So if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would be building a SaaS platform, I would have told you no way. I actually started my career in consulting, later worked in social impact venture capital, and based on my two experiences in those areas, I got really fascinated by this idea of building an equity-based investment model for investing in creators like you with startups. So my initial kind of objective with being an entrepreneur was to help scale a more capital-efficient model for kind of supporting creative entrepreneurs. What we learned in that process was that there's this huge challenge with data. Creators were building very complex businesses around multiple recurring income streams, and nobody had a great picture of their kind of company when it came to data. So that's kind of what inspired us. We were actually looking for a solution ourselves to help kind of consolidate all this data, as I was doing due diligence and trying to help our portfolio companies understand how they were doing, and we couldn't find anything out there in the market. And once we realized that this was a really large problem that we weren't facing alone, and that no one had built a solution yet, we decided that it'd be a good opportunity for us to take that on.
Now, when you're dealing with creators, you're not dealing typically with, the hyper technical person. This is a person that, wants to create something and wants to focus primarily in their dream of dreams to be a creator and not be a data scientist, like you said. Are you able to, is your platform, or do you aspire for your platform to be something where that this creative person can say, you know what, if I push on these 3 levers, my dream will come true, or if I avoid this lever over here, that's going to be better than doing something else. Like it's simplified to the point where I know kind of what to do each day.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that we really want to be able to help people do is just understand what is and what is not working. Because as you can imagine, the challenge of running a business around content is that it's incredibly time intensive, and you really don't have a lot of bandwidth to spend on digging into the finer details. So, our mission is to make data analytics accessible to literally anyone, and make it as easy as, just plugging in your data and getting started from day one. One of our advisors and investors likes to think of the product as a data scientist in your pocket. And obviously we have a ways to go before we get into the full functionality and building everything that we can out with ML and AI. But yeah, the basic tenet is going to be using data to help creators make better business decisions in a way that's very easy to understand and use. Obviously, we're building a B2B product because we do see creators as small to medium-sized businesses, but the B in this case behaves a lot more like a C or a consumer. So the challenge is building something that is so simple and easy and intuitive to use that anyone is comfortable trying it, but also complex and robust enough to handle the challenge of doing real technical data insights and analysis.
So walk me through, I'm a creator. What do I do to, input data into the system? And then what is kind of a dashboard or some of the actionable information going to look like?
Yeah, so we think about data in kind of 3 different buckets. We think about social data, we think about streaming data, which can be any type of content streaming data, and then we think about revenue data. And so as a creator, whenever you first sign up for the product, you're effectively invited to go over to the My Accounts page where based on the platforms that we currently integrate with and support, you can start going down the list and connecting your accounts. This is the MVP version of our product. We're actually getting ready to launch version 2.0 of the product, where in addition to connecting accounts that you already have and that you are currently using, we're actually starting to build in the ability for us to recommend platforms based on what we know about your career. One of the other challenges that most creators face, and I think what a lot of intelligence and analytics platforms fail to provide, is context to data. So one of the things that we're doing from a very early stage is we're enabling creators to go in and set goals around specific KPIs, whether that is growing, let's say, a specific social media channel like TikTok, or it's reaching a certain number of streamers on a platform like YouTube or Spotify or Twitch. Really providing context to that data so that we can also start curating content, specifically kind of educational walkthrough contents that we actually create ourselves as well, on how to do things to enhance whatever platform you're targeting or going after. So those are the first kind of initial insights. It's providing context to data, providing education around that content, and then also helping creators to build out their stacks. In the future, in the near future, we're going to be effectively scaling some of the things that we've been doing on a manual basis, where actually we've been going in and running kind of very specific analyses on creator accounts and making very specific recommendations. We'll be building into the actual tech stack itself as we kind of continue this journey from our pre-seed to seed state.
So now say I'm on TikTok and that's my platform that I use, and I'm trying to obviously grow my followers. I'm trying to monetize in some manner, I guess by advertising. I guess that's a typical way. And say I have 1 million followers. What is some of the information that you'd be able to glean from that? And what, are you going to tell me, oh, you know what, you should post, 10 times a week, not 7, or you should try posting in the evening more, not the morning, or partner with these 5 influencers? Like what type of information is going to come out of your platform?
Yeah, so great question, Lee. So, first and foremost, obviously, the engagement that we can glean from TikTok itself. So follower growth, engagement data. One of the things that we've recognized from an early state in our early beta tests is that the vast majority of creators, they don't know how they're doing relative to how they should be doing, right? So if I say, hey, Lee, you've got a 5% engagement rate on TikTok, you're sitting there thinking, okay, great. I think maybe, is that good? Is that bad? And if you're not truly familiar with the platform and how things work, in reality, that's not that great. TikTok generally has a much higher engagement rate. However, if I said, Lee, you've got a 5% engagement rate on Instagram, you should be jumping up and down because that's incredible. And so helping creators understand that question, is what you're doing in this platform specifically working? And then if we can target those areas, once we've identified what your engagement rate is, that is the opportunity to go in and say, hey, you're doing great. You're compared to everyone else, you're right on track. You're doing fantastically. Keep it up. Or if we know that you're kind of over or under indexing based on the data that we're seeing, we can start recommending kind of areas of improvement. Now, as far as you should post more, you should post less, I think there's some other platforms out there that are doing a great job of that. We certainly do want to get into that space as well. But for right now, it's more about comparing your engagement rate on TikTok compared to that to your engagement rates on Facebook and Instagram, and then looking at some of your other various channels, whether that's your YouTube or Twitch or Shopify store. We're finding that we can be most helpful right now to users who are building their content across multiple platforms, as opposed to necessarily just one platform specifically.
So you're giving me context in terms of how I'm doing relative to how others are doing in the same platform. So I can say, you know what, maybe I should invest more time here than there. because I'm already getting more traction there.
Exactly. And it's one of those things, if we are able to create an account for you, and then we recognize that you haven't connected your email list, that actually gives us an opportunity to start kind of telling you about other products and services, whether that's MailChimp or SendGrid, or there's tens to hundreds of them at this point, of different email list providers, where you can start focusing on building your brand outside of just one specific channel. Because the reality is, as a creator, the more that you can do to own your audience or your community or your data, the better position you're going to be in the long haul, when it comes to ultimately monetizing your brand.
Yeah, if you can figure that out and really encourage creators, I talk to them all the time, and that's one of my big pet peeves is you're going to have to bring as many people off any of these third-party platforms as possible into your own ecosystem. So you better figure out a way to do that.
Absolutely. It is about building organic, true relationships with a niche community, and it's been said over and over again, the value of having 1,000 true fans. 1,000 true fans who are paying $100 a year. It's $100,000 a year as a creator. So it's one of those. It's not a small opportunity for the ones who can capitalize on true community and relationships.
Now, when you built this business, you built it with your brother. Can you talk about how that came up, and kind of maybe share some advice about going on an adventure like this with a family member?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say my brother Jeremy is amazing. He's fantastic. We're very different. I think that's one of the reasons why we work so well together, is that we have very different backgrounds. Jeremy has actually been a professional creator for over a decade. He's got a band. He's on Spotify, YouTube. He actually just completed an accelerator program run by a large creator economy focused company. And he's very much a thought leader in the space. He's been a music journalist as well, and he's interviewed everyone from Leon Bridges to Taylor Swift and in between. So he is very much our kind of ideal user and use case. So working with him provides a level of context that I am incredibly grateful for that we have. He's a frequent beta tester of a lot of new features of these different social platforms and backends of different products. So I think that through him, we have a very good eye for the problem and lens. As far as working together, as I mentioned, we are very different, which I think lends itself well to a very kind of collaborative relationship. I like to describe myself as the spreadsheets and PowerPoint guy, and his technical title is our Chief Creative Officer. So he writes all of our original content and everything kind of relevant to the creators that we're serving. So as far as advice, I think we've always had a unique relationship. I think that one of the things that I've had to learn is not to be the big brother, to be the business partner. So I think I've had a few missteps in that regard, but I've learned over time how to kind of separate the two things. And I think one of the challenges is always separating work from personal and family, and that's, I'll be honest, I don't think we've done a great job of that. Most of our conversations do rely or, revolve around the business, but, trying to get better at separating those as well.
Yeah, I've done a lot of shows with family-owned businesses, and that dynamic, of turning it off at the holidays, with your family around you or other siblings. I don't know if you have other siblings that aren't involved in this. It gets a little tricky, and you have to be mindful, and you have to put kind of walls around things just for your own mental health.
Absolutely, and what you bring up about mental health is paramount, because obviously that there's nothing fast about building a company or a startup together. As much as we're led to believe, it's a pretty long journey. So And I will say too, it's been great having a co-founder who, I've had the luxury of knowing for, I guess 33 years, 32 years. So, I think that there are benefits to that when you really understand how somebody works before you have an opportunity to actually work with them in a professional capacity.
Yeah, I mean, you get the benefit is obviously the trust is there and the watching of each other's back is there. The negative might be that sometimes you're fighting about issues that took place when you were 10, and it's just kind of a new version of that.
Yeah, there can certainly be some ingrained behaviors from growing up together, but yeah, so far so good.
Now, talk about why you decided to take part in Startup Showdown. How did that get on your radar, and why was it important for you to kind of go through that process?
Yeah, so we're based in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're always looking, obviously, at different opportunities to work with different partners, and obviously throughout the U.S., but also in the Southeast. And Panoramic popped up on our radars as an innovative fund based out of Atlanta, and I stumbled upon them and then saw that they had this Startup Showdown kind of pitching competition, and it seemed like a really interesting opportunity for us to get out and get in front of a new audience, and really just kind of test their ideas, test the pitch, and kind of see what the general reception was to it. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to get out there, and I was thrilled to hear that they were launching a podcast and continue the narrative and the journey of sharing startup stories.
So what was kind of the most beneficial part of the Startup Showdown process? Was there any kind of intel you gleaned, or anything that you were able to say, oh, that's really good, let's focus more on that, or less of this?
Yeah, I think anytime you have the opportunity to really work with a team who is used to seeing thousands and thousands of pitches and refine your pitch in front of a team, I think it's fantastic. That was a great opportunity to get in front of them in multiple rounds and get constructive and helpful feedback. I think as founders, we can live in an echo chamber sometimes. And so it's nice to get that outside perspective in a really safe and encouraging environment. And then, as far as kind of post pitching competition, it also led just to some visibility. We actually met a journalist who ended up wanting to write a story about us after the competition. And that actually ended up turning into some organic relationships with strategic investment partners, and it ended up kind of really broadening our visibility in the greater Atlanta area, which was fantastic for us, obviously being based in Nashville.
So what's next for RootNote? What do you need more of? How can we help?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking, Lee. We are in the middle of actually closing out a pre-seed round right now. We're getting ready to launch the second kind of iteration of our platform. So we've been experimenting with our MVP for the past year and have gotten some really incredible feedback from our early beta users, and we've been incorporating that into the next launch of the product. So very excited to get that out there. We're getting ready to release a mobile version, which we're incredibly excited about. Obviously, working with creators, that's very important. And then excited to get this fundraising round kind of closed so that we can get back to building and back to business development.
So if somebody wants to connect with you or your team or take a look at RootNote, what is the website?
Yeah, the website is going to be www.rootnote.co. So that's .co. And then they are also free to email me at jason@rootnote.co as well.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much for giving me the time, Lee.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Startup Showdown.
As always, thanks for joining us, and don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Startup Showdown podcast so you get the latest episode as it drops wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more and apply to our next Startup Showdown pitch competition, visit showdown.vc. That's showdown.vc. All right, that's all for this week. Goodbye for now.